right, Pickle, it's been a minute. I don't know if the sound's alright on this, I'm really hoping it is, but apologies if not. I am getting that sorted out with a remote mic. As you can see, I'm in a rather new setup. I've actually moved twice since I was last on the channel. There will be more of an update for subscribers right at the end of this, but I don't want to bother you with that right now. What I will say is that if the camera starts to do this, take it as confirmation, but also it is because my neighbour in a London apartment block has the washer on full, and I only just realised setting up today that that means my entire table and flat vibrates a little. Clearly I was just going with the shake before, I was like moving and grooving with it, and now it's not going to work for this. So there is no way of stabilising your reading. I do apologise. Also, hi if you've never met me. Let's explain what this is. Right, so for those of you who weren't here before, we used to do something called a Marseille Mini, where we picked a letter of the alphabet Sesame Street style and did 3 to 6 readings a time based on words beginning with that, as a sort of pick a pile thing a while back. That's in the playlist that's down below. But what I kind of wanted to do for the comeback, don't call it a comeback, I've been here for years, was put all of those together essentially into one crystal maze type device, the esoteric tombola, the psychic lucky dip. So the word that you can see down below, I don't know yet, but it's whatever I picked out of this. And then today we're working with the Thoth deck, if I can pick it up, the Red Handler Normand, which is already showing me cards, and I'm just going to speak about that later, and the Fallen Angels Oracle deck, which I was gifted by a Christian and work with in a syncretic manner, so please do not be alarmed and run away screaming for the hills. Now, what should I do? Let's just get to an intro with more intel, shall we? Hello hero, it's Lucy Lannon. It's good to see you. You've seen the title, so at this stage you know more about today's reading than I do, since I speak to you from the recent alternate past. This is a general, timeless one, ideally designed for quite a large audience, so we won't get as specific as we would in a private booking, link down below. If most of what I'm saying feels like an answer to a question you've been living, take those tidbits with you and let a fellow traveller excavate the rest. If it's not your reading, there are playlists on my channel hub to randomise finding something else. Whilst it's true that a broken clock is right twice a day, I'm not sure that same clock is right 10 times within the hour. So trust yourself, above all, to know what's useful for you and what makes you feel more empowered for hearing it, no matter what your beliefs. While we're on beliefs, on this channel gendered terms are just a specificity of language to describe energetic tendencies and signatures, solar or lunar inclination in accordance with a hermetic law of polarity, and not any kind of socialisation to buy into wholesale or conflate with the identity or orientation of anyone described. Romantic and spiritual labels used are plucked from lengthy precedent predating any unfortunate trending controversies or engineered cyclical backlash. My dude, around these parts, we don't relinquish the complexity of our full histories. We trust ourselves cognitively to adapt what we consume and see what's healthy and long-term accurate. I'm legally obliged to say this is entertainment in quote marks, and that I'm an occultist not qualified in unrelated disciplines to advise on physical and mental health, finances, legalities. You get the picture, you're in charge of you. All my readings are protected and warded by frankly magnificent beneficial forces, though I don't share my custom prep rituals on camera any more than I give out my address. I hope the reasoning behind that is obvious, but you can trust there are zero parasitic or adversarial influences permitted within 100 unseen paces of any signal we patch from the noise here today. So sit back, relax into the shape of your most luminous possible future self, cozy up to imaginal allies, and take in whatever it is you need to hear. If you do like it, this small channel with a big mission very much appreciates subscriptions, thoughtful comments, or donations in order to spread the word and keep the lights on. Now, let's tune that dial. Alright, so the numbers 9 or 10 might be significant to you. Also Medusa or any other Gorgons, or that kind of snake lady vibe. They don't have to be, but anyway. So I see that the word that you got was beautiful, which I'll now hold up to prove that this is indeed the one. Cha-cha, at random. It's probably in reverse now, actually. Now I think about it, but anyway. There was also a bit of stickiness to the shuffle, so there might be a sticky situation, or there might be a stagnancy to whatever this is about. Should I do oracles first? Okay. So we have, first up, the Nine of Cups, happiness in reverse, right? Don't panic. We're okay. I'm okay if you're okay. We have, I'm not going to be able to pronounce this, Andrealphus, persuasion, 55. Also might be a significant number, but adds up to 10, which we already had. And then in the Lenormand, which I'm going to use non-traditionally because I can't be bothered. Not because I can't be bothered, but because it fits better like this. Oh, we have Animus, which I got earlier today also, and I have thoroughly shuffled. And this is the 5 of clubs in this deck, and it's a beautiful picture. So, okay. I need one more. We've got swiftness in reverse, which I think would be, yeah, it's an 8 of wands. With beautiful. I will be with you. Also, I don't know whether that's tilted. I'm sorry if I keep drifting. Anyway, what's coming through on this is the peacock. And with the word beautiful, I would suspect that this is to do with somebody altering or adjusting or parading their physical appearance in order to appeal to what I want to call a masculine, because we've got this. But that doesn't have to be a male energy, it just has to be someone who is more in the active mode. We don't really do gender on this channel, it's too complex to go into, so it's just kind of anybody that's the more active party in this dynamic is being impressed by somebody who usually is the more kind of laid back or passive party, or perhaps the more intuitive of the two. I feel like that passive party, which is probably you because you're watching a tarot reading, wants to have a speedy communication that you think will ensure your happiness. This is, honestly, this is giving putting up pictures of yourself so that someone will text you. I'm sorry to say it, but it is, and that's why we've got beautiful, right? So that also something to do with Medusa and the Gorgons is that with some people who accept the more modern iterations of the tale, which I don't, she is a figure of kind of protection for women in a sense of like sexual injustice or sexualized dynamics, and in that she's kind of variously in the tales she's either described as really ugly and snake-headed and terrifying and she'll turn men to stone with these bright eyes of hers, or she's described as the most beautiful creature ever to exist and will turn men to stone, will stiffen men. Do you follow me? So there's kind of that like push-pull dynamic of the way that somebody is presenting, in that yes, they're peacocking, but it might be in a way of being a bit of a baddie, or it's just got like a evil queen kind of a vibe to it. And again, doesn't have to be a female energy, it's just more of a feminine energy within this dynamic of like passive, active, or receiving, giving. But the trouble is that this giving isn't necessarily going to guarantee happiness. Indeed, this is a 5 of wands. This person is perhaps in a bit of conflict with the person trying to visually impress them or bring them back in. Hard relate. Okay, so let's get more tarot on this. I want to do like a Marseille style 5 card and get deeper. Let's do you, you, and you. And then underground we have this, and overground we have this. Right. So we have Power, which is the 4 of Pentacles, a Knight of Discs, and a reverse Ace of Cups for our main 3. And then we also have what's happening underneath is kind of the universe, which is sometimes about endings, but not always. And what's happening as an overarching theme is Valor, which is the 7 of Wands. Again, this is giving like a sort of slightly combative energy. I'm wondering whether this is kind of after a fight, whether you guys have had a bit of conflict or a misunderstanding or a difference of opinion in some kind of minor way, because I mean it's once, so it's not big deal major arcana type stuff, it's more sort of persnickety. And you've been very kind of, I'm saying you as if you're the person peacocking, it might be the other way around, but you've been very kind of forgive and forget about it, and you're like, I know, I just need to draw them in by showing that I've changed in a physically demonstrative way in order to begin a dialogue. But I feel that the problem is that this person, sorry Theda, doesn't necessarily want to begin a dialogue at all, because they're still in that like mode. I think they might be watching you. They might be, you know, viewing your Instagram stories or checking your timestamps if you're on WhatsApp, or just looking you up in general, or kind of if you share like a place, like a school or a uni or anything. I definitely think they're looking out for you because of the way that this figure, from my perspective, is kind of looking back across the rest of the cards. But with the universe as the kind of underneath, the dark stream under the reading, if you like, and with that Medusa energy coming through because my ring fell off, this is complicated association, but it is. It's sort of suggesting that this person is more stubborn about the fact that this has driven you apart a little bit. And indeed there is stubbornness present in this universe card with the sort of Taurian energy. Sorry, I love Tauruses, but you are, right? Me too. Which is leaping out to me more than the other elemental animals that are presented, right? There's also like a snake-like structure around this woman in the middle, which makes me think there might have been what was perceived as some shifty behaviour on your part. Some kind of slithering thing. Or indeed it might be another Medusa and sort of feminine power reference, that kind of dark feminine energy. Okay, let's get into the central three, because this is going to be less confusing. There's protection required. Can you hear that? That's usually my get your saging going kind of signal. So it doesn't happen all the time around here, but when it does, it's loud. Okay, so in the past there was a sense of stability between you and this person, whether that's just regularly checking in a very casual way, you know, like in chat or anything. I keep getting all this digital stuff with this, so if you do have an in-person dynamic, maybe it's it's got that kind of a distance to it like social media has. I don't know whether many of you watching will remember the time before social media when interactions were quite different, but it's got the energy of a more modern thing. It's got a sort of, I almost want to say like an aloofness, a separation, but a healthy separation, just like a cultural dynamic separation, not a kind of, oh no. And that has enabled you to have quite a regular form of contact, or quite a normal pattern between you, even if it's not fully contact, or it's just like, it's what you would expect from the situation, right? And that has felt powerful for you both. And it's possibly in an enclosed environment. I'm getting Discord server or something as well, because there's this kind of squared off quality to this labyrinthine thing on here. And again, with the Greek myth stuff coming out of what is more so a ceremonial or Egyptian deck usually. So then present tense is a Knight of Pentacles, which indicates to me that if this is like a call for somebody to contact you using a little bit snake-like means, which is fine, we do what we do, they are on their way, but I think you don't want to rush them. So you might want to reconsider either sort of doing this with this purpose or the timing of it. It concerns me a little bit that the title of the reading is beautiful, but we seem to have a situation when one person is trying to use beauty in a persuasive way to another person. That's not because that's immoral or bad or anything. It's because really the best reason to kind of flaunt a new self or to present as having done the work, if it's not like a physical beauty, is because you're proud of yourself and you're celebrating doing that. And if it's a bit of both, that's fine. But there is a kind of caution energy coming in here, and I'm getting confirmation for that, that it might be that you or they feel that you kind of have to present and be like, look, voila, it's all different. And that might not be the right motivation. And I can tell you now, from years of experience totally messing up, that if your motivation is wrong, it doesn't matter how meticulous your actions are. It doesn't matter how strategic you can be, or indeed how demonstrable it is that you have done the work, or you have shifted, or you have changed. It's like the energy underlying that is what a person truly connected to you will pick up on. And if you're looking to close the distance of this slightly removed sort of social media-ish dynamic, then what you need to be giving off is the correct energy that magnetizes people closer to you because they sense an authenticity to it. That is not what I'm getting from this. And I don't want to offend anybody when I say that, because as I say, I've done this, I'm doing this even. But there's just a bit of concern there. And with this kind of, they are on their way, they're kind of facing in a different direction to the other card, and indeed to like the majority of the reading, the way it's laid out. So for me, it's like, they're coming, but if they feel that they're being pushed, they're going to turn away. It's giving avoidant attachment, if I'm honest. And that's come up a few times in the last few days for me, personally, and sort of in readings for other people. Book with me down below. There is like a sense of somebody wanting to force contact with somebody who's not ready for that contact and who feels potentially either just busy or overwhelmed, or like they operate on a different frequency of that kind of stuff. Near future, we've got this Ace of Cups reversed, so it's like risky, right? Ace of Cups being a flow of love, a flow of emotion, a sort of transparent, translucent communication between two people, particularly of an emotional nature. And this has a web on it, which is emphasizing the need for protection. So why is, I'll ask that in a minute. But there's an extra factor to this dynamic, and I'm not necessarily talking a person, we'll check it out. But it's almost as if like there is more reason to be authentic and to do things because you feel that they're organic to do, rather than to do something to try and pull somebody towards you, or to instigate a kind of contact that's a bit different. Or even for some of you to like maybe share pictures that are not of the nature you've shared before, that kind of thing. I would just be a little bit more moderate with that. And if you're seeing this and you're on the other side of it, know that if you're getting contact with, which is a little bit unusual for you guys, it's sort of a call to come back, because this person isn't necessarily wanting to address the conflict. I'm not saying the conflict avoidant. What I am saying is that this person who's being pulled towards the peacock, right, is very cognizant of what happened between you, and it's still fresh in the mind and it's still relevant. The other person, it's not as relevant to them, and they might see it as like, oh, that's all forgotten if I do this, but that's not the case, right? And that's why you're here listening to me, because it's kind of, it can be iffy territory. Seven of Wands is often defensiveness. And for some of you, there is a position in literal defense because of some of the symbols I'm seeing on this. So there might be some kind of militaristic background to this, or I don't know what that is really. For some, I'm hearing you watched a military drama together, or there's something to do with like militarism on TV or in fashion or something that's to do with you guys. I don't know, hit me up in the comments if that's a confirmation. But yeah, it's almost like this person is still feeling defensive, and it kind of doesn't matter, with the keyword being beautiful, how beautiful you are, right? Because that's still, that defensiveness is there because they needed to process what went on. And again, this can be as minor as just like you're on a dating app and you've got a slight difference in communication styles or something. It doesn't have to be huge, but it's like you're ready to pull them in, they're not ready necessarily to come. So why am I getting sirens and webs? What is this like protection that's required? All right. Spill it out all at once, mate. Okay. Yeah. I will share this. Okay, so we've got a Devil in reverse, a Lovers, which I'll partially cover, not necessarily what you think, a Queen of Swords, which, oh, again, do I need to cover that? I can't even tell whether that's a bodice. Very Jean Paul Gaultier anyway. And a Knight of Cups. I think whoever this is, right, the person being magnetised, pulled in, there is something here about choosing between a personal addiction, and that can be a really small thing. It can be like food or gaming instead of thinking about stuff. It doesn't have to be like a traditional big addiction, but there's some kind of impulse towards something which they're at a crossroads of choosing between. So they can either go forward and carry on doing this thing, which sort of very softly, very lightly might be their way of dissociating from conflict, like this one that they kind of can't help but think about. And while that process is happening, there is also someone extraneous to the reading, so neither you or them, in a feminine energy, whether they're masculine or feminine, sort of in reality or in presentation, who is interfering with the way that they feel they can express love. So, I don't know. It feels almost like misogynistic at this point to go into the stereotypical iterations of what that could possibly be, but this could be a mother figure, this could be a female best friend with incentivized interest, this could be an ex of theirs, it could be just someone that's sort of not even necessarily big deal status in their life, but particularly persuasive at the moment. And remember, we did get persuasion as well as this peacock. And a 5-5 makes me think of somebody in my own life who ultimately became extremely influenced by a group of people to the point where they kind of lost the ability to decide for themselves about others, or to discern via behaviour rather than via kind of whispers in the ear, you know what I mean? And that, I think sometimes that can happen when you might be in kind of devil reversed programming where you're in a habituation which is trying to avoid a specific issue, because in trying so hard to kind of push that to the back and just concentrate on what it is you're doing in the present, sometimes you're not weighing up with your intuition other factors, because that is an active process of pushing intuition away. So then when somebody comes in who might not have the best intentions and they are very persuasive in the way that they speak about a thing, and I don't know what that thing is, but it's influencing the way that they romantically relate, right? Because this does appear to be a love reading. It's kind of like if you're already shoving your intuition down and then somebody says those things, you're not going to like bring your intuition back out just for the moment to be like, is this person telling the truth, right? Because you're already in that mode of self-preservation essentially, and it can very lightly be that. It doesn't have to be a huge serious issue, but it you know, in spiritual circles it's still quite a large risk, because no matter how frivolously you are distracting from something that might be true, you're still in distraction from the truth, right? And maybe if you're kind of trying to draw this person back through beauty or through physical aspects or through something that demonstrates a change in you pertaining to something they've said, you're kind of almost playing to what those influences are dictating to be the value system. So like an example would be, if you know that somebody around you is very sort of sexually influenced by a particular group, right? Because there's people in that group that they may or may not have been involved with, and there's like enticement going on. It could be that part of your developmental stuff is that you at one point try to play to like, but I'm sexy, but I'm, you know, and sort of push forward like, oh, I fit with these values and I pass with that, right? But the trouble is with that, those values might be more reflective of the group than of the person kind of listening to the group. Do you see what I mean? It might be a temporary phase for them as well. So then if you play into it and it's not your authenticity, or it's not, I mean, everyone kind of wants to be sexy, don't they? Whether or not you're asexual or whatever, but it, you know, beyond the currency of that in society, it's like a certain threshold of it might not be you. It might not be in your nature. And I say that compassionately, and it's not calling you unsexy. It's saying that some people have a natural disposition to really value or perhaps overvalue those qualities as opposed to other things. And I think if you're watching this, that isn't intrinsically part of your personality, but it's something that you might feel that you have to do for someone who is in a developmental phase where the people around them are telling them that that's the value system. And again, that's one example. It doesn't have to be about being sexy. It could be about demonstrating that you have money, or demonstrating that you're sort of very grounded and reliable and logical when you're not necessarily built that way as a person, and not everyone needs to be. It's just like there is someone sort of saying, well, if it's not this, why would you want it, right? And this person that we're attempting to pull in, or that someone is kind of going along with it, but it's more that they'll grow out of it, if I'm honest. So if that is you, if this is flipped and you are the person kind of being drawn in by somebody peacocking in some way, whatever that way is, it can be a non-physical thing. You're being called by this reading to maybe acknowledge that there are value influences in your life at the moment that are not necessarily in coherence with what it is that you value, or that what it is that you're interested in now may not be the truth in 6 months, and it's best to be kind to everybody and to tap in with oneself. Ooh, throat chakra. To tap in with oneself and really try to tune into what it is that's correct for you. And sometimes that can be just like an instinctive response of like, ooh, feel weird about that, not sure why, because everybody else says it's fine. But getting that sense back is going to be really important. Yeah. Okay, can we get any more detail? Because we've got a little bit of time left. I'm going to, yeah. Okay. So I was asking about qualities to embody if you're either of these people, because again, the reading can go two different ways. If you are this person, you're getting interference as a card. I mean, right? And it's an 8 of Swords, so it's kind of like also the awareness that you are putting yourself where you are. So if there's any aspect of life in which you feel trapped, or like you can't maneuver, or like you're not quite getting what you want, even if what you want is actually this, right? Analyze the people around you and make sure that you are always checking in with yourself when you're speaking to them, and when you're interacting with people that aren't like them. That's the really important bit, is like there is a group of people around you who you might feel are very like you for the moment, but there's a deliberate attempt to block you off from that which is not like you. And that's why you're here. Sorry. If in fact you are the peacock who's thinking about maybe like sort of showing off something that's new or different or changed, or an appearance thing or a sexy thing, to try and draw this other person back in, you are being asked to embody the Prince of Discs, which interestingly has that Taurian imagery again, even though that's not the traditional association of the card. So there is a like stubbornness coming in through again. And he's riding a chariot, so Taurus and Cancer might be relevant here. Prince of Pentacles is interesting because we had the Knight of Pentacles for this other person's progress towards you being underway, but not at the rate that you want it at. And going from a knight to a prince is a bit, it's almost like saying you need to get to their level in terms of being patient about this. I'm not trying I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm not calling you anything. I'm not saying they're vastly more mature than you. I'm saying that in this particular scenario, it would behoove you just to let them kind of do things at their own pace. Because it seems like they're going through some stuff, actually. It seems like even without your involvement, they're at a transitional point for themselves and with the people around them that they might need to process fully with their own intuitive skills before they can realise that you are of value, or that a conversation needs to happen, or that reparations need to happen, or something needs to be kind of mended or restored. There's also a big emphasis on communication from your end and not from theirs. Their card was about progression and yours was about kind of chatting. So be careful if you're in regular contact with this person. Oh man, this is so relevant for me right now. Not to over chat, not to kind of send too many messages in frequency, or to be kind of too present in the way that they see you, however that is, you know, socials or real life, because they need space, they need time, really. And I'm noticing that it's all taking place within a circle, and the world card was within a circle as well, or the universe. And there's a sense of like insularness, and I think that's like, maybe you're very safe in your own zone and you're very like, you have habitual ways of communicating with people, and that is a form of reassurance for you, and that's absolutely fine, and I do too, right? And it's sometimes reassuring for friends when they know how it is that you're going to be. And I think that's an attempt also to recreate this first power card of like, we were in this set dynamic where we did this, then this, then this, then this, and it went like this, and it's supposed to flow like this. Capricorn energy coming in, right? But really there's a call to flexibility here, because in attempting to sort of keep emulating that energy and be like, look, this is really stable, also I'm really hot, there's like it's almost like an insular, like being in your cave kind of thing. Yeah. And I don't think that's bad for you, but I think it might be bad in terms of like the way that you relate to this person, because they might read that as being like too set in a particular direction, which is why we're getting all these bulls, right? Bull-headed, or red rag to a bull. So, you know, in this conflict, whatever happened, they might have seen a volatility at your end, and you're kind of potentially trying to demonstrate stability now as a counter to that. But the real thing to cultivate is that internal stability and that patience with them, because if you are stable, that means you can wait, right? If you are steady, it means that they can take the time to come in, and you're not going to be thrown off balance in terms of your emotional self-regulation by needing to adjust, needing to wait, perhaps even witnessing them going through a phase of relatively addictive stuff, or being around people who you're aware are influencing them, right? I'm struggling with that at the moment myself. It's very difficult when you have a gentle and oblivious party being pulled in one direction or the other very subtly by people who are not as gentle. I very much accept that, but really what's coming through in the reading is that the true demonstration of balance in your case is not necessarily the peacocking. I mean, do what you want to do. If you feel good about yourself, go ham, right? But there is something going on here with just needing to be able to wait. Yeah? Okay, if that was useful, please like, subscribe, ding the dong, thank you kindly. If you are a subscriber, stick around and I'll tell you a tale. If you're nosy, also stay put. But if not, I will see you in the next word that feels relevant to you. And now it's time for the segment that I like to call Lucy, where the heck have you been? That's kind of a long one. Firstly, if you're a returning subscriber, thank you, I love you. If you've bought from me, even more so, thank you, I love you. If you're not a subscriber and you're just nosy, maybe ring the bell, maybe hit subscribe, I don't know, might be for you. Might be some good things coming up. Those of you who have been around the channel a long time know that I manage sort of physical disability issues, in that my stamina for recording for a week is kind of limited. And I also had a stroke a few years ago, which means that even though I'm fully recovered, thankfully, all good, there's a lot of like cognitive fatigue that I get on top of that, which sort of translates a little bit like a combination of physical fatigue and like neurodivergence, where executive function is a little bit tougher. You can get very overstimulated by the environment and not be able to do things the same way, that kind of stuff. But when that's happening concurrent to like oxygen level things that affect just like how tired I am, basically, it means that producing regular content for a channel like this is actually quite a challenging thing. And that's without also creating client videos, also seeing in-person clients, which I now do a lot more. Again, if you want that, contact through my Etsy, which is down below. And also now having a day job, because one of the changes is I've moved properly to London. I think I was listed as London before, but I was essentially like outskirts of London, sort of trying to be a Londoner socially, whilst paying rent that I could afford. Now I'm paying rent that I can't afford. I mean, it's not that I can't afford, it's that I've had to incorporate other sources of income in order to be in a city that is so lively and vibrant and magically rich and full of cinephiles, which I adore. And it's just been a bit of a trip in terms of like readjusting to that, moving down here, briefly being homeless in the period of trying to move down here and not successfully finding apartments that were within my price range and that believed me that I have a weird kooky job that I can reference, right? Yeah, so all that's been going on. Also, some of you know that prior to my dipping, firstly, I was on like what is essentially a degree length course with the Faculty of Astrological Studies. I'm still studying for my D.F.Astrol.S at the end of my name, which will mean that at some point over the next couple of years, astrological services will be added to the shop. And I mean thorough consultation, I mean just astrology, and I mean qualified and registered with an international body. So that's exciting, but it's also like I decided to be a student at the same time as all this stuff. And an international student at that, and with all these like events going on and people to meet, and it was just crazy. At the same time, I had the third in a string of 3 bereavements that I've had. You can hear my voice cracking now. This is where it gets, you know. That was actually while I was still uploading. I think I did YouTuber while that was going on. I don't know how I did that, because I was studying as well. Yeah, the mind boggles sometimes, but through that last bereavement, firstly, it helped me to process the others, but secondly, it was a family member who I was very close to, and there was a lot of like strange family stuff going on around that, which I don't think I mentioned on the channel, but it excluded me from the process of that person passing deliberately, in a way that was incredibly hurtful to her and me, really. And it also recontextualized, like, by that, what my family system really is and the extent to which I fit in it anymore, and all of that is located in a different place, but it's still not easy, even if you're kind of away from it, to recontextualize those very root chakra things at the same time as your housing, livelihood, and just like general social network are all changing and in question. And you're a student and running a channel and also divining every day. So there was just a lot. There was just a lot going on. I didn't admit to myself how much was going on. And I was getting feedback from like other YouTube channels that they believed that if you miss a video, it's like a moral responsibility to your subscribers. And there was a bit of like, I'm not going to name names, but on a certain other spiritual channel I can think of, there was a bit of like shaming going on with that as well. So I almost like didn't want to tap out when I should have, energy wise, because I felt that that would be a disservice to you guys, particularly ones who have worked with me privately as well and also support the channel. It just felt like I couldn't back out and do that. And it was like, it was almost like dropping people who need care, who need help, who need who were sometimes in situations where they couldn't access their own intuitive skills through the amount of stress that they were feeling, which ironically was something I really identified with, having had to learn to do that with so much going on. So it was like, I didn't I didn't want to be that guy. And then as happens with burnout, you kind of do too much and do too much and do too much, and then eventually it just all falls away. And to be honest with you, I'm really grateful that this time that it fell away wasn't a health crisis, because this is the sort of picture that we were looking at before I had the stroke. And I mean, you know, on spirit, hopefully I'll never have another one, and I know what the spiritual purpose of doing that was and what it brought to me in terms of different kinds of cognitive understanding of an animistic universe through some of the symptoms that I had and things like that. But you know, it even though that was like an experience that I now value 8 years distance from it, I came perilously close to fucking my health again. That's all I want to say. And I know that's a strong word, but it is true. And I think I did that because I didn't want to be someone who was seen as inconsistent, partly because some of the less balanced figures in my life were trying to use my creativity as a description of inconsistency in order to influence other people for their own gain. Yeah, it was a time. It was really a time. And I don't want to bum anyone out. It's more that I want to point out that it was a lot, just to say that if there is any inconsistency in future, it's kind of not my problem that the algorithm works on an ableist basis. It's kind of not my problem that YouTube promotes channels more whose content creators have the capability to put out more in a more regular way, and perhaps with other commitments that they can still manage. And I'm not saying that I can't, and you know, I'm filming a backlog of videos as we speak, so hopefully by the time that you're seeing this there will be quite a lot of content coming. And I do apologise that I wasn't here for many of you, and I'm so glad that you chose to continue subscribing and buying and meeting up with me in person and all these glorious things. But I had a real dilemma with myself with what inconsistency meant as a person who will never be able-bodied and whose body will actually actively deteriorate. I mean, it's life-limiting and it's progressive. It's not progressive in the traditional sense, but it's always been that I will be having more transplant surgeries, having stuff going on where I'm back in a wheelchair, and having less of a sort of picture of the future than other people in my age range. And already, in comparison to people also in the 30s, late 30s I might add, there's been a lot of barriers there to kind of being at the same levels and living in the same way. And I'm not saying that in a millennial way, although that's valid. I'm saying it in a literal, like, I couldn't finish some of the processes that are normal. I couldn't have the body that is deemed most socially acceptable for the moment, right? And I couldn't do the familial stuff without relationship access that as a baseline required that I was a gym bunny with a great degree, a great career, and a load of travel under my belt, which are all things that are pretty impossible for me at this stage. So it was almost like realising I couldn't cope with the channel at that time was a microcosm of realising I couldn't cope in a much broader way, and also that I'd been really chasing after people, which is such an apt metaphor when you have oxygen issues, because you're forever behind everyone, right? But I was behind people specifically that I'd focused on, who I now see were either people I would never catch up to, or were actively quite ableist because of the invisible nature of what's going on here. So there was a lot, you know, and it all sort of collided with the end of a twin flame dynamic with someone that I will count in that group, and that probably still doesn't know the extent of what was happening while we were seeing each other. And I just, I hit that breaking point, and I logged off. I tapped out, and I'm glad I did. And I think some of it as well, and the reason that I have to tell you in this detail rather than just saying, hey, lifed, and I'm back, and I'm sorry, you know, that would have been sufficient. But I think the reason I'm going into so much detail in a way is partly because I don't really see invisibly disabled people in a physical sense represented online ever, never mind in our community. And part confirmation siren, whoop whoop. If you're invisibly disabled in a physical sense, hit me up down below, hey. But partly also that being in this, being in this kind of an industry, shall we say, I almost dislike calling it that, but being in this kind of a vocation, probably a better word, there is a lot of imposter syndrome because we are devalued culturally, even as it's more accessible than it would have been for our ancestors to do this kind of work for a variety of reasons that mean we're not, threatened with death for it. It's also like less accessible in terms of getting an audience for it in some ways, because you kind of have to reach further, and we're very lucky that the internet is here for that, but you also have to be taken seriously in that reaching. And there are so many voices countering the spiritual community based on miscommunications about what we actually do, misunderstandings of divination as some kind of some kind of deterministic predictive thing, rather than a lot of the time self-examination and a sort of hypothetical walkthrough of what could be the case so that you can make an informed decision. There's all these things going on that I sort of more acutely understood as a student of astrology, which is one of the most maligned and misunderstood 3,000-year-old disciplines. Like, it's ridiculous that most people in the UK don't know its links to royals, presidents, MI5, scientific history, astronomical inception and history, and how many people that were important historical figures were astrologers first. And that sort of, again, was like a microcosm of this idea of like, nobody takes this seriously, nobody's going to enable this. You have to be the person to move forward with it with confidence. And that took a while because my confidence was shredded by other things, by friendships that went astray, by relationships that were particularly difficult, by health stuff, all of it. And I want to speak on that because if it is so common for us to have imposter syndrome, it's also notable that sometimes the initiation of becoming a person who is a diviner or who is a witch or who is a spiritual practitioner or healer of some kind, whatever kind, right? Because we're all welcome here. Sometimes your initiation isn't like this grand cosmological ceremonial thing. It's being tested with the idea of whether you're actually meant to do it, right? And whether you are cut out for it. And I was so sure when I set up this channel and when I set up my business that I was absolutely the right person for this career, and I was supported at every step of the way by what I work with. And the intel coming back was just glorious, and it was like my ability just accelerated and accelerated the second that I said, yes, I'm going to do this with my life. I see what the stroke was trying to teach me. I'm dropping my old career, which was in a completely different industry that I love but can't really return to. And I'm going to do this, and I'm going to set it up, and I'm going to help people, and I'm going to contribute, and I'm going to use the fact that my brain is wavy gravy now, the fact that it does go in all these different directions as an aid to channeling, and the fact that I've had my reality questioned because of ophthalmological issues and things like that, to speak about the nature of reality with people and to increase connectivity with people instead of everybody pushing each other apart. And bear in mind, this was all going on at the same time as the panini, so a lot of that was like in the air, right? And I think feeling so supported then, and feeling so sure, and having immediate feedback from all kinds of places that it was such a good idea, and even that people around me who weren't so good for me were like really threatened by it, which made me go, oh, that must mean it's like really quite a powerful thing, you know, and that was a realization. But all of that then sort of fell away when I couldn't keep up anymore. And obviously I can't keep up is kind of a theme for me. That makes me kind of sad, but it's one of my life themes that I've on some level chosen, and in every possible arena that you can think of, physically, in relationships, in academia, in careers as other people see them, there is always this like lagging behind sort of alien feeling. And I wasn't able to tap into my Aquarius and just be proud of that alien until I'd really admitted that even with this, I couldn't keep up. And that might itself hold meaning and be an initiatory process in the absence of effective community ritualizations in the senses that maybe our ancestors had. And I mean, for me specifically, that's people in Ireland, in Dagestan, in Scandinavia, in Scotland. I'm kind of all over. But, you know, all of those different sorts of practitioners, it's very much like people know you're a practitioner and people feed that back to you, and it's a very fixed, sort of almost tribal role. And I think that's lost now. And even where we do get that role within the community, there's such a sort of stuck up its arse, Dawkins-esque atheism, skepticism going round that doesn't allow for different spiritualities being a non-harmful thing, that it can be difficult to be that figure within that community and not feel vilified. And that's a battle by itself, without then also having energy management and self-management, emotional management issues. So I'm grateful to all of you, essentially, if you're here, whether you're here newly or from before. If you are a practitioner, hit me up down below and I'll check your stuff out, because I want to keep sort of co-supporting. For those of you that I used to have dialogue with in that sense, I think my algorithm's changed since I took the break and came back. There's that new bar now of like highlights of your week in subscriptions, and I don't want that. I don't know about you, I don't want it. I just want to see things in order and scroll through to what's relevant. But because of that, I think I'm not seeing all of your stuff sometimes, even if we're clicking the bell. So I do apologise, and if I used to talk to you, hit me up, because I will again, and I'll sort of keep you in a tab open so that I can monitor that. It's independent from the changes to YouTube, right? But yeah, I'm grateful to all of you, and I'm not sure they'll ever see this, but I'm grateful to the friends that I've made down here, and one in particular who I deeply love, and you know who you are, that made me remember who I was before all this as well. And, you know, sometimes in great ways, sometimes in like, oh, you're doing this bit kind of ways, which were very gentle. And I owe it to them really that I'm kind of back in the game in this sense. I've kept doing readings in the shop, very, very occasionally, lots of in-person readings, because I seem to have developed a network that find me because they need a tarot reader, which is, you know, it's one of the things, isn't it, when you do this. But I've been away from this in this sense, and I want to put back into it, and I want to hopefully grow numbers, so you can help me with that, you know how, right? And ultimately return my focus to this stuff in a way that is stable, because even if there are things out there going on with me that are a bit scary, I feel more stable. I feel that I know that I'm meant to put this stuff out there, even if I have to do it in a different way to everyone, like I do everything else. And I know that realising that as being my initiation, it's not been the difference of being spiritual in the first place, it's been the difference of being in the spiritual marketplace, having to function differently, and potentially not getting the same opportunities as a result of that inconsistency, which, you know, as a Cancer stellium and strong Aquarius, like inconsistency and being all over the place and being a bit unpredictable and, hey, surprise, here's your reading, is actually my vibe. I just hadn't claimed it because I'd seen it as like a stamp of shame somehow. And I feel like some of you will identify with that, right? For whatever reasons you have. So yeah, that's where I've been. And I'm very happy here. I like it a lot. I like the people. I like the vibrancy of London. And to whatever extent I need to do, like, you know, 60-40 to one workflow or the other, I'm going to try to keep a presence here, you know. And yeah, I think that's it. I think that's a lot. How are you?